Welcome to Glow for Hope, sparking conversation on mental health, where we break the silence, build community, and ignite hope. We're here to talk about what really matters: mental health, wellness, and the conversations that help us all feel seen and supported. Every episode will bring real stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you navigate mental wellness and suicide prevention. Because together, we can change the conversation. Let's get started. Welcome to the Glow for Hope podcast. I'm Kelly Pelker, your host. Here at Glow for Hope, we believe in three simple but powerful things: conversation, community, connection. We're not here just to raise awareness. We're here to spark real conversations, the kind that happen before crisis, not after. Because when we make it safer to talk about mental health, we make it easier for people to ask for help. And today's guest embodies that in a way that might surprise you. When you when you hear the words comedian and suicide prevention in the same sentence, it makes you pause. Frank King is a comedian and speaker for over 40 years. He wrote for The Tonight Show for 20 years. He delivered 13 TEDx talks. He shared stages with some of the biggest names in entertainment, and he has also lived with depression and suicidality, come close enough to ending his life that he speaks about it with startling honesty. Frank has turned his long, dark journey into a mission to use humor to save lives. Frank, welcome to Glow for Hope.
I got nothing.
All right, end of
Thanks very
interview.
much. Good night. Tip your waitresses. One of them is carrying my child. Sorry, flashback to Comedy Club. Yes, I'm delighted to be here. Yes, and I am the mental health comedian, and that, by the way, is the elephant in the room when I speak, oftentimes. And I almost always open up with, I know what you're thinking. Comedian, suicide, how does that work? If you'd like to know, I'll tell you. My depression and suicide run in my family. It's something called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days. And I'll spare you the tale because it is horror movie horrible. And if you're already hardwired for suicide and you're that close to an actual suicide, and I don't think anybody could have gotten any closer, then the chances of you seriously considering taking your life later in life go up. And that's what happened in April 2010 during the recession after we filed bankruptcy and lost everything. That's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like, literally. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger, which the audience I get a nervous laugh. I go, no, you're supposed to laugh. It's called comic relief for a reason. And as a matter of fact, a friend of mine came up after a keynote last year and he thought it'd be funny. He goes, hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger? I go, hey, man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed? So that's where the humor is in the topic. Not jokes, nothing to joke about, but funny, personal, actually happened anecdotes. Because people say things and don't realize what it sounded like till they think about it. And I usually give them a little pause to think about what they just said.
So what is it about humor that makes it easier for people to hear hard truths and maybe even admit their own struggles? And do you think humor lowers the defenses that keep people silent?
Yes, and there's something else it does as well. Humor, they call it comic relief for a reason. And there is a psychological principle. If you tell somebody something serious or share with somebody something serious, and then you have a lighter moment, comic relief, their brain is much better prepared for the next piece of serious business because it's not just death, dying, mortality, morbidity. It's a bit of a roller coaster. And so I think that's why it brings people's defenses down. It makes them easier to digest. Hopefully it makes it more memorable. And I believe my two mental illnesses are simply the flip side of my creativity, imagination, comic ability. Same brain, same wiring. So it's an unusual gift of suicidality and comedy. So it's a blessing and a curse, but I put it to good use.
Yeah, you certainly have, and you've been doing it for over 40 years.
I'm old.
When you first started, were you already using humor as a coping mechanism then, even before you had language for depression?
No, actually, people ask me that. Is humor a coping mechanism for? No, it's just is it like generational depression, suicide, it's the comedy's in my DNA. I mean, my mom was funny, my sister's funny, my dad was funny. It's just, again, it's that combination of um I think it's more therapeutic for other people, actually.
Hmm.
The second element, besides humor, to lower their defenses and open them up, Brene Brown said that vulnerability is a superpower. And to see a man, especially on stage, sharing all these things about himself, which men tend not to, which is why I believe one of the reasons 8 out of 10 suicides in the US currently are men, don't reach out for help.
Yeah,
So to see a guy up on stage talking very frankly about these things, I believe it gives people in the audience permission to give voice to their feelings and experiences.
absolutely. I love that. Love
Yeah, when I
that.
get done, I say, look, we're going to do some general Q&A. And then after that's over, if you have a question you want to ask or a story you want to tell, and you don't want to share it with everybody, I'll hang out another 30, 45 minutes. And there's always a line, sometimes 2 people, sometimes 10.
Well,
And
that's
most of them start like this. I've never told anybody this. Yeah, yeah, I get that a lot. But they feel comfortable, you know. I mean,
yeah. You've given them a safe space to
I've
open
had
up.
people come up crying. I did a thing on in Cincinnati on site construction site, and there were half a dozen guys lined up, which is guys. And so I took them individually. The last guy in line is crying so hard he can't speak. So I waited. When he gathered himself, I said, "What's up?" He said, "I haven't slept in 2 nights. I work on the 5th floor of this building, and I think about jumping off every day."
Wow.
I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because I've lost 3 people to violence in the last year, including my daughter who died in my arms."
Mm.
So the HR guy wasn't far away, so I waved him over. I said, "Look, you need to go get the EAP, Employee Assistance Program manual, turn to mental health, find the closest mental health facility where we're standing right now, and literally take this guy by the hand because he's circling the drain." A couple of months later, I had occasion to talk to the HR fellow. I'm terrified to ask. Finally, before we hung up, I said, "I got to know. Whatever happened to that nice carpenter?" He said, "Frank, he was evaluated, medicated. He's back on the job."
Wow.
There's a little ROI
That
for
just gives me goosebumps.
you. Me too.
It's a special space that you open up that I think is incredible. And suicide is so high in the construction industry to begin with, let
Ridiculous.
alone, yeah, yeah. It's scary. The professions that we don't even think about
No,
that
people are
that would be
surprised.
so high.
Construction, veterinarian, physician, dentists say that people always thought dentists had a high rate of suicide. Well, guess what? Physicians, veterinarians, attorneys are right there with them.
Pharmacists too.
Yep. Well,
Pharmacists.
part of the problem is is not suicide, is stress. A lot of these
Mhm.
professionals come out of professional school with like $500,000 in student loan debt before they open a practice or go to work in a pharmacy. And
Yeah.
so the financial stress leads to physical stress and mental stress, to high blood pressure, heart attack, stroke, depression. So stress is the linchpin and all that, I think.
It does so many weird things to us that we don't even think that it does, and it's scary. So you hold the record for the longest comedy club road trip, 2,629 nights in a row, no home. That
No,
sounds exhausting and isolating.
yeah,
What
that's
what did that season of your life teach you about loneliness and how isolation can quietly fuel depression?
well, as luck would have it. Um, when I got on stage the first time in San Diego at the Comedy Store in La Jolla, which I'm sure you well know,
I know where that is.
yeah, still there today, 40 years later.
Awesome.
In my first 5 minutes, open mic night, halfway through my set, I heard this inside my head: "You're home." I decided that moment I was going to do it professionally. Actually, I had decided in 4th grade when I told a joke, kids laughed, teacher was hysterical. I'm going to be a comedian. Um, and so I, I decided I was going to do it full time. So 18 months later, I said to my girlfriend, now my wife of 38 years, "I'm going
Nice.
on the road to do stand-up comedy. Do you want to come along for the ride?" Figuring she'd go, "Oh, hell no." She goes, "Yeah." So we gave up the apartment and our jobs, jumped into my little tiny Dodge Colt, And we were on the road 2,629 nights, either at a comedy club or on our way to a comedy club for 7.5 years. And
That's wild.
because she came with me, and we were sort of the June Award Cleaver of comedy. Went to bed, at a reasonable hour. We ate healthy food, went to the gym every day. I mean, there was a comic near the end of our run who said, "Look, you got to get me 2 weeks with Frank and Wendy. I got to dry out and get back to the gym." So, so yeah. So having her along, and it was an amazing time being comedy. Seinfeld, Foxworthy, Greg, Ron White, Adam Sandler, Kevin James, all these people, Ellen, Rosie, that I got to work with before they were famous, Dr. Ken Jeong. Um, it was an amazing time to be in comedy.
That's incredible. What an experience. And it probably made a huge difference that your wife went with you, or girlfriend wife went with
Yeah,
you, and you didn't have
huge.
to feel those pressures of, oh, I need to get back home, and
Yes,
yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome.
It was there were a lot of guys, mostly guys, comics, and some of them were married in their zip code. Um, so I'm always,
Flashback of Russ.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh Lord, yeah, there's stories there. The the there were several times when, well, there were so I was always back at the condo after the show, and sometimes the other two gentlemen were, you know, doing
Hmm.
something else. And so their wives or girlfriends would call, and I pick up the phone, and I more than one night, and the phone rang 8 times. They're crying on the other end. Where is he? I'm sure he's with another one. So finally, I got wise, and I bought an answering machine, old fashioned, the tape. Hi, you reached Comedy Condo. This week it's Frank King and Russ Nails and Renee Sandoval. Leave a message, sound the tone. That way I didn't have to pick up. You know, so it's
Oh man. So you also wrote for the Tonight Show for 20 years. So
Mhm.
was that like during this whole seven
Yes.
years? Wow.
Yeah. What happened was Johnny Carson used to have three guest hosts. Joan Rivers, who screwed the pooch and sold the puppies when she got her own show,
Hmm.
and then Shanling, Gary Shanling, but he was busy with the Larry Sanders Show, so he couldn't do it. So Jay became the guest host, and Johnny was very mercurial. Mercurial. He'd pull up on a Friday and go, "I'm taking next week off."
Oh wow.
Which Mondays was best of Carson, but the other 4 days of the week, Jay had to have 18 jokes a night for 4 nights. So he started hiring road comics under contract, and like independent contractors to fax in jokes to get him prepared for that week. And I found out from another comic, I got the independent contractor paperwork, sent it back in. And so when the call came, I would crank out, a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen jokes over the weekend for him for the coming week. And then when he got the show for real as his own, he let most of the contract labor go, but some of us were able to stay on until he left for CNBC. And a genuinely nice guy. When I had my first aortic valve replacement, I've had two. The first person to call me in my hospital room after I got out of ICU was Leno. What happened was I couldn't reach the phone. So a comedian friend of mine who was there picked up the phone, and Jay said, "Hey, let me speak to Frank King." Now, my comedian friend thought it was another comedian doing a Leno impression and hung up on him. So Leno calls back and goes, "No, it really is Jay Leno." "Oh, God, Frank, it's Jay Leno." So when I got him on the phone, he said, "I heard you had heart surgery. It's a good thing you didn't have it in LA. They'd take it out and leave it out." And I have co-authored 4 books on men's mental health.
Hmm.
And for the last one, my co-author said, "Do you think you get Jay to do a blurb for the cover?" So I called Helen, his assistant, whom I talked to over the years. I said, "Do you think Jay would do a blurb for me?" And he did a really sweet blurb for the cover of our fourth. He's just a genuinely nice guy.
Oh, that's great. Was there ever a disconnect between the public laughter you were helping create and what you were privately carrying? And what does that kind of say about how good people can be at hiding their pain?
Oh Lord, yeah. There's a lot of high functioning people who are ridiculously depressed. I was more depressed in my previous life. Um, I I married my high school and college sweetheart. She was a wonderful woman, but we, I, it was January. You'll know where this is. It was January of 1984, Actually,
Mhm.
this is in my TED talk called Suicide, the Secret of My Success, Dead Man Talking. I open up by saying, what would you do if you knew for a fact you had nothing to lose? What audacious goal would you attempt if you knew by not attempting it, you would literally die? That's where I was in January of 1984. It's 5 in the afternoon. I'm driving down 163 toward downtown. It's raining. And I had this thought for the first time because I was miserable. I was miserable selling insurance. I was miserable married, although she's a wonderful woman. And I was miserable because she did not want me to do stand-up comedy. So I was not going to open mic nights. So my thought was, why don't you just kill yourself?
Mm.
My second thought was very empowering. I thought, wait a minute. I could quit my job, divorce my wife, try comedy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, hell, I can still kill myself. That's how I got into comedy. I had absolutely nothing to lose.
Well, hey,
Now,
at least it kept you here.
yes, and again, my first wife was a wonderful, but very much junior league. All of her people were insurance people, very middle class, white picket fence, the tractor run on, 2 kids,
Mhm.
we should have never gotten married. We had nothing in common. But you know what they say? Opposites attract. If she was pregnant, I wasn't. So not true, but a great joke. So yeah, so
Oh.
the comedy actually finally giving into what I believe since fourth grade I should be doing. That's what saved my life. To having having the testicular fortitude to, but again, I had nothing to lose. If
Mhm.
I'd stayed put, I would have killed myself. I mean, there are few things more powerful on this planet than somebody with absolutely nothing to lose. So,
Yeah. So, yeah, well, you've obviously been very open about how close you came to ending your life. For someone listening right now who's struggling quietly, what's the first sentence they need to say out loud? And for someone who suspects a loved one is struggling, what's the first question they should ask?
well, if the loved one is depressed, if they're aware that the loved one is depressed, or if they suspect it, I would ask them, "Are you depressed?" And if they said yes, then the next question is much more difficult. Are you having thoughts of suicide? Just like that.
Hmm.
I tell my audiences, if you can't ask that question, find somebody who can. And if you can't find anybody, and I click the clicker and up goes my cell phone number on the screen, call me and I'll ask them. Because there's an old urban legend you should never mention suicide in front of somebody who's depressed because it make them more likely to do it. And of course, the reverse is actually true. They're
Right.
less likely if you bring it and drag it out in the sunlight. And I get questions like, how do I know they're depressed? Well, let me give you my top three. It's not an exhaustive list of symptoms, but the ones that I talk about in my keynote. They eat too much or they can't eat. They sleep too much or can't sleep. They have trouble getting out of bed in the morning. So they're often late to school or work. However, oddly, they rally in the afternoon like an entirely different person. And here's one you can observe visually. As long as you've known them, they've been pretty well put together. Last couple, 3 weeks, month, hair's kind of dirty, clothes aren't quite so clean. It may be because they're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning to simply run a little wash, take a shower. At which point you ask, are you depressed? Now, in my keynote, I say, let's talk about what you don't say if they say they're depressed. You don't say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, turn that frown upside down. My personal favorite is, have you tried fish oil? At which point, Kelly, I go from suicidal to homicidal. Um, Here's what you do say: I'm here for you and I mean it. I know you're not lazy or crazy or self absorbed. I know that depression's a mental illness. Here's the good news: with time and treatment, things will get better. I'll take the time and I will help you get the treatment. And then you have to ask them the question: are you having thoughts of suicide? Now, what if they don't admit it, but your gut tells you they are? And I always say, go with your gut.
Mhm.
How would I know? Well, they talk about death and dying a lot. You catch them Googling death, dying, or how to die by suicide. Suicide or death appears as a theme in their artwork, maybe their music, their writing. They're gathering the means to die by suicide, stockpiling medication or purchasing a firearm. And they're getting their affairs in order, especially if they're giving away prized possessions, because they want to make sure the possessions go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. And here's a counterintuitive one that's very dangerous. they've been depressed for a long time, and now they're happy for no apparent reason. And you're happy because they're happy. Well, here's the deal. They may be happy because they've chosen time, place, and method, and they know the pain is coming to an end. Because a lot of people don't understand that many, I would say most people who are, you know, died by suicide did not want to die. I didn't want to
Mhm.
die. I just wanted to end the pain.
Right. Right.
Then again, if they say, I am having thoughts, then you ask them, do you have a plan? And if they do, what is your plan? If it's detailed, time, place, method, you need to help them get to a mental health facility, or at the very least, dial 988 to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or text 988.
Hmm.
Now, here's one, Kelly, that I've never read this in a book or had this in a class. What if they've got a plan, but it's not particularly detailed, a little nebulous?
Hmm.
Psychiatrist and I came up with this. We decided we would say, okay, tell me, you're going to kill yourself? If they said no, I would say, okay, tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever it is that's keeping them here, because something is keeping them here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having this conversation.
That's interesting because there's so many. I love what you just shared. Because there are, this is the right thing to say. This is the thing not to ever ask. And so I'm kind of surprised by that last question that you came up with the psychiatrist is, I mean, I see why,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not a triggering kind of thing like that, would put them into a deeper thought about, okay, well, maybe I do need to get more detailed on this and
Yeah,
figure it
that's
out.
right. I'll get back to you. Uh,
Ask me next week. Okay.
well, what I found is that sort of, pardon the pun, frankness, bluntness, it somehow breaks through, because people tend to dance around it. You're not gonna do
Mhm.
something stupid, are you? Oh my God, I do something stupid about every day. Uh, you need. I think that straightforward, because it comes out of nowhere and it surprises them, and they have to
Mhm.
think, why am I here? Why am I still here? What is keeping me here? And oftentimes it could be religion or family or friends or pets or children or whatever. And I have some more advice if you're open to it.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes somebody will come up afterwards in that, where I take the conversations privately, and they'll say that their child is depressed and having thoughts
Mhm.
of suicide. Do I have any suggestions? And I said, yes, I do. My advice is not to say to them, but you have so much to live for, because as someone with suicidality, that's not going to put a dent in it. What I suggest you do is join the conversation they're having in their head. One of the three legs of the three-legged stool of suicidality is burdensomeness. They feel they're a burden. The world, their parents, their siblings would be better off without them. So here's what I would advise to say. It may have crossed your mind, son, that you are a burden to your mom and me. In no uncertain terms, you are not, nor will you ever be, a burden to your mom and me. And it may have crossed your mind that we would somehow be better off without you. And in no uncertain terms would we ever be better off without you, because that's what they're thinking.
Mhm.
So I would say join that conversation in the young person's head. And I had a guy come up to me in Las Vegas afterwards, and I told him that. And I bumped into the organizer of the event a year later. We were on the same Zoom. He was following me. I was getting ready to leave, and he goes, Frank, don't move. I got to tell you, that gentleman you talked to after you got done speaking, you talked to him about his son. He contacted me and he said, I think Frank King helped me save my son.
Oh, wow.
So that's the power of starting the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have to ask just because, there are so many myths about talking about suicide and putting the further thoughts and stuff in someone's head. You've been so successful in what you're doing. And I mean, are there people that just totally shy away from you because of the content, or are they lining up like, oh my gosh, we can't wait to get you in here kind of thing? And
Well,
or
there's
is there
university.
one extreme to the other?
Yes, there was a university one time, in Texas somewhere. I can't remember exactly where, but they called and they wanted me to come and speak to their students. because 1,100 students on average die by suicide every year, and 40% of high school students report anxiety and co-occurring mental health conditions. 60% of college students in the last study I read. So I was all set to go. They sent me the contract, and then they had a board meeting, and somebody at the board said we can't have him come to campus. Well, why not? Because if he brings up suicide and then somebody dies by suicide, the parents will sue us.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's that myth that talking about it is going to somehow make somebody more likely to do it. So the guy who was my contact there said, Frank, look, I'm sorry, I think they're wrong. And if I was a little closer to retirement, what I would have said at that moment was, listen, if that's your take on this, we're going to have to change the college mascot to an ostrich because your head's in the sand. But he said, I'm not that close to retirement. Yeah, and
What a great thought, though, to be able to say that.
oh yeah, and I did um, a let's see, refinery, a BP refinery up in Northwest Washington. 62 people, and they had a survey, and so they collected all the surveys, and I had lunch with a group that booked me. People booked me, and so we're eating my little box lunch, and they said, Frank, do you want to know the results of the survey? I said, sure. They said, well, 60 people, they love you to death. They thought the information was important and timely, and they enjoyed the humor. And I said, and the other two, they thought it was absolutely inappropriate. It's not something you should bring up at work, and you had no business being here. So they said, well, what do you think about those two people? And I said, well, I'm here to save lives. So my feeling about them is F them. And they all laughed because, I had the same thing happen on campus, University of Montana Billings. Two guys would drive me around to radio stations because it was open to the public, and we did some promotion, maybe public would attend. And the guy said, comics coming to campus, Frank, comedians coming to campus, it's been very difficult for them lately because people get their feelings hurt, people get their toes stepped on. Are you concerned about that when you're going to speak on campus? I said, well, if I was a comedian, if I was just doing stand up, which I've done in colleges, if I was doing stand up, I'd be very careful. I said, but I'm, I'm here to save lives. So those people, same answer. And
Yeah.
I do what I do. I say what I say. And if, it's just, and I coach speakers, and every now and then they'll do a gig, a breakout at a conference or something, and they'll lament the fact there were only 13 people there. I go, yeah, but what if one of those 13 absolutely, positively needed to hear what you had to say?
Mm-hmm. That's what makes it all worthwhile.
Yes.
We say that all the time. So, we go and set up a table somewhere and we sit there for hours and people just walk by and they, see the word suicide on a piece of literature and it's like, and then you get the one that comes back by and just unloads. It's like,
Yes.
we're here for you today, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And I did a electricians convention, a big one, a national one in Phoenix. And they said, would you come if we just paid your travel, your air, ground, hotel, whatever? I said, well, construction, my number one ideal client group. I bet you I can maybe get a spinoff engagement for full fee. So I went, I did my breakout, and I had 13 people. Well, one of the people in there was a gentleman who works at a huge electrical contracting company in Indianapolis, and he comes up afterwards, and he'd lost somebody to suicide, daughter, I think, and he's wearing a shirt that says DKA, DKY, DKY. And he goes, do you know what DKY stands for? I, I said, he goes, don't kill yourself. He established a foundation called DKY. And he said, I want you to come to Indianapolis and speak at our company at our national conference. So he was the one that day. And who knows how many people, um, that I'll speak to on the 27th of February. Be a couple hundred people total, I think. Who knows how many of them, are struggling. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And and you've delivered 13 TEDx talks, right?
mhm.
That's a lot.
It's yes, it is a lot.
It's a
It's
lot. Some people are like, they s- they have such a big goal to get one of them, and you've had 13.
all have a mental health aspect or another. The last one I did was the theme was climate change. So
Oh
before I
wow.
said yes, I had to do some research. Is there an emotional impact, a mental health impact due to climate change? Well, guess what? There is. There's for those who have become what they call climate change refugees, my wife and I included, because we had a wildfire here in Oregon. We were evacuated for 2 weeks, and the house came within a quarter mile of being burned down. So we are,
Oh,
in fact, I mean, I, I when I smell smoked salmon, I get flashbacks. Um,
wow.
so also, there's something called eco anxiety, meaning you haven't had that happen. You've never been evacuated because of a flood or whatever, a fire, but you're worried about that possibility. And if you're already have a mental challenge, it makes whatever you're living with worse. So I was able to, and I had some jokes in there as well, well placed, organic, you know,
Hmm.
about the environment, not about the conditions. But yeah,
Right.
there climate change has an impact on your mental health. And if you're already struggling, it's exacerbated.
I would think is that kind of like how the seasonal affective disorder comes into play too, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Although having lived in Southern California for 11 years, sunshine depresses me. That's we're in Oregon. I love short, wet, cold. I have reverse seasonal affective disorder, like a vampire.
Uh, so why do you think that this message keeps resonating on that stage for TEDx talks and what's like the one myth about suicide or depression that you most want to dismantle?
Um, choose joy.
I have a shirt that says that.
Yes, I know, and it's a good thought. People mean well, but somebody said to me, "You should choose joy," and I said, "Look, this thing is in my DNA. Choose joy, unless you're talking about the dishwashing liquid. I think I might have left."
Because it's just not possible for you.
No, it's not. I mean, I can choose to be. Um,
Like we
it's
say,
like,
people should choose to be happy.
yeah. Oh, like yeah. So you've got diabetes. Oh, well, listen, you need to choose to have normal levels of blood sugar. That's
Hmm.
another thing. I would never take an antidepressant. Well, A, you're not depressed. And B, would you ever say that to somebody who is diabetic? I would never take insulin. It's,
Yep.
it's a chronic illness. So it's, yeah, but yeah, and it's a matter of educating. People generally don't mean to be mean. They just
Right.
don't really, they, and suicide especially, it scares people.
That it does.
Yeah,
That it
so it's
does.
it's it's even there's a stigma, I believe, to mental illness and a separate stigma to those of us who are suicidal. Can I tell you a funny story about that?
Sure.
COVID, it was April. They were just beginning to give the vaccine. Speakers Bureau called me. They had a conference they were trying to book in Florida, a state with no mask mandate.
Hmm.
So he goes, Frank, look, I cannot find a speaker who's willing to go to Florida because there's no mask mandate. I said, dude, I'm suicidal. What do I care? Book me. Now, I wore an N95 on the plane. I wore an N95 in the common areas of the hotel. I'm not stupid. I'm crazy, but I'm not stupid. But so when I got there, I'm standing there in front of the audience and they're looking at me and I said, I know what you're thinking. What are you doing here? And I told them the story. I'm suicidal. What do I care? Book it. So,
So you mentioned earlier that you co-authored the book Guts, Grit, and the Grind.
yep, four of them.
Um, four of them, four of
Mhm.
them, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but men are statistically less likely to seek help and more likely to die by suicide.
Mhm.
In your experience, what keeps the men silent, and how do we get them to open up?
Well, a part of it is what they now call toxic masculinity, what we called when I was a kid, big boys don't cry.
Mhm.
Big boys. I mean, it's men, yeah, they're wired to be, the provider, the leader, bulletproof. You know that if you reveal those things, it's a sign of they believe it's a sign of weakness, when in fact reaching out is a sign of strength.
Mhm.
But it's hard oftentimes for big, rough, tough, tumble, guys to open up about it. I mean, I've done presentations where, like I said, construction workers, big burly guys come up just crying, you
Mhm.
know, and it's because I've given them permission to do that because they know I'm not going to judge.
Right.
I think that's
Do you think that's shifting at all with the way that kids are brought up these days?
I hope so. I hope that, well, in my mother's generation, the when I had that episode when I was 4 and saw this,
Mhm.
the family, her generation created a myth. If I ever brought it up for any reason, they were gonna tell me this fantasy story, um, almost gaslighting me if I had remembered. I didn't remember until my cousin reminded me in 2012. Um, that was their generation. You just didn't talk about it. We don't talk
Right.
about that in polite company. Um, but in my generation and my cousins, we're all open about it because most of them, I think every cousin I have and my sister are all on one form of medication or another. So the benefit is for their children, they have no problem saying, "Mom, I think I'm depressed." So it's just my mother's
That's
generation was, they just didn't talk about that kind of thing.
yeah. And bring religion into it, and it makes it even
Oh, oh
worse.
Lord, yeah. My next door neighbor, when I came so close to killing myself, and I'm sure, yeah, well, I'm not sure he meant well. I hope he meant well. Um, he said to me, if you'd killed yourself, you'd go to hell. And I said, here's what you don't know. I was already there.
Touche.
Yeah.
Which
And I
is a
tell
sad
people,
thing to
look,
think. We're not making light of that at all, but it's yeah,
yeah. And I
that's
tell people, um, if the person firmly believes that, if that's their belief system, then okay. But you don't want to layer your belief system on top of their beliefs. I try to meet people where they are.
right.
I'm not particularly religious. However, if I'm talking to somebody who's thinking about suicide, I'll ask them, are you strong in Christ? Yes, I go to church every Sunday. I go to Bible study. It's a big part of my life. Well, what do you say? You, me, and your minister get together and form a team and tackle this problem together. So I'm going to leverage whatever I can. If
Right.
that's how they believe, and we can leverage that to keep them around, then I'm all in.
That's a great approach. So if there's a father listening right now, what conversation should he start tonight?
Well, I would begin by asking flat out, "Are you depressed?" And look for the signs that we talked about, signs
Mhm.
and symptoms. And again, join the conversation in their head. Go straight to, it may have crossed your mind that you're a burden, and make sure that they know they're not. And it may have crossed your mind we'd be better off without you. And in no uncertain terms, would we be better off without you? So, because that's what they're thinking. That's what I was thinking. I was going to kill
Right.
myself because I had $1 million life insurance policy. And we just filed bankruptcy. We were broke. My wife was devastated, and I thought I could fix this.
Mm.
Trouble was, I called my insurance agent because I knew, having sold insurance straight out of college, there's a 2-year suicide clause. So I said, Graham, how long have I had the policy? He said, 22 months and don't do it, because he had that conversation many times and had delivered checks. I
Wow.
had to wait 2 months to kill myself because I was not going to leave my wife broke and brokenhearted.
Hmm.
Brokenhearted, yes, because I was gone, but $1 million. I was worth more literally dead than alive.
And thinking that that would have taken care of her pain
Well,
a
she'd
little
still
bit
be
better.
heartbroken, but she wouldn't be broke anymore.
Right.
She'd be restored financially.
You also survived two aortic valve replacements, a double bypass, a heart attack, and you joke about losing to a puppet on Star Search.
Correct. That was the worst part. The valve jobs are, yeah. The valve jobs, it's all congenital. It's not lifestyle. My dad had a bad heart valve. They believe he died in 1964. They know he had a heart attack, but that's about all they knew. but it passes from father to son. It's a malformed aortic valve. So I had that replaced. He died at 40. I had it replaced at 39. My mother had the cholesterol of a deep fat fryer. So my cholesterol at time of first surgery, 357.
Wow.
Yeah, on the cholesterol chart next to that, it says notify next of kin. Uh, yeah, but obviously I've and then they gave me a human valve. The first valve job, I got a transplant. I got a human valve. Um, my joke in my act is from either from a cadaver or an attorney who wasn't using it. And then that wears out because it's tissue. It lasted a long time, 18 years, and now I have a mechanical valve to replace, and that should last me. People go, "Will that last you the rest of your life?" I says, "Probably going to be pretty close." Click. Oh, yeah. So it runs in our family. I got a really bad uh,
Bad ticker.
poker hand.
What does surviving physical health crisis teach you about emotional resilience?
Oh, well, life is short. I woke up. I promised my wife that the only thing she'd ask me when we went on the road for that trip, that long trip,
Mm-hmm.
she wanted to go back to San Diego when we were done. That's all she asked. And so I woke up from that surgery and I thought, we're leaving Raleigh because I'd gone back to Raleigh to work at a radio station. We're leaving Raleigh, we're going back to San Diego because life is short.
Heck yeah.
It makes you appreciate simple things. Standing up in the shower and being able to shower yourself because with a chest crack, you can't shower yourself for a couple of weeks. And that
Mm-hmm.
first shower when you're in there and you're allowed to, I mean, it really gives you an appreciation for the simple things.
I can
And
imagine.
now,
I,
that said, last year I was 68. I'm walking the dogs, and suicide crossed my mind. Not the act, but the topic. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. I'm 68. What's the hurry? I mean, how long do I have? I was 38. Okay, we can talk about it. 68? Let's just let nature take its course.
You'd think that, but I mean, that's a big age
Yes,
group. That's a big age demographic for suicide. And
boomers.
it's scary. Hmm.
In part because, turns out, boomers were going to change the world. And they did when they were young. I mean, I believe the Vietnam War was shorter than it would have been with, if if they had not protested the war as they did, the war would have gone on a lot longer. So I mean, they changed the world in their late teens, early 20s. And so they were going to change the world, going forward. And they look back at 68, 69 at their 40-year insurance career and didn't really change anything. So it could I
Never
and
really thought of it that way.
yes, and
Makes
maybe
sense.
I would hate to be looking back now. It's 40 years of comedy and speaking. I'd hate to be looking back had I not made the jump to stand up comedy. And 40 years down the road, looking back thinking, man, I wish I had.
Hmm.
I would really be depressed.
Yes.
So yeah, I encourage people, the question I ask oftentimes on an airplane, sitting next to somebody, what do you do for a living? The woman said, I set up exhibit hall booths at conferences. Do you like it? If they pause, Kelly, the slightest, then you know they don't like it. I said, what would you do if I could wave a magic wand and you could do anything you wanted for a living? And she told me, I can't remember what it was. Open a yoga studio or something. A year later, I got an email from her. She goes, Frank, you probably don't remember me. I was setting up booths, exhibit hall booths at conferences, and you asked me, what would you do if I could wave my? She goes, I'm doing it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah, because I
awesome.
think people get on that treadmill and just keep running and never.
It gets
I feel
stuck in a
very,
rut. Yeah.
yeah, I feel very fortunate that I had that thought. Why don't you just kill yourself? Okay, we need to change something and quickly. So suicide is literally the secret of my success.
That it is. And it's I just find it fascinating because I mean it's hard to get into speaking for as long as you did. It's hard to get into stand up like you
Yep.
have. So to couple that with the topic that you have, I think is incredible. And I've worked with speakers, authors, coaches for the last 25, 20, 26 years now.
Mhm.
And it's, I mean, what you've done is amazing.
Well, and nowadays, Kelly, because I mentioned I coach speakers. Back in the 90s when I started in the corporate comedy, not speaking for meeting planner would take a keynote speaker who had a half a dozen keynotes and pick one. Nowadays, they want the expert or the thought leader. They want to see the word expert. Frank King is an expert suicide prevention. And so I tell my speakers, look, you need to pick a lane. The
Mhm.
riches are in the niches.
Yep.
You need to be pitching a niche if you want to make money in this business. And of course, they could speak on all kinds of things. And they're like, I go, I know. If you speak on one thing, you're not speaking on these, theoretically losing money. But I believe short-term
All the
loss,
work.
long-term gain. You've got to become that person, that go-to person in that topic in these industries.
Hmm. The one that they
So
talk about when you're not in the room.
yes, the one whose name comes up, the gentleman I met, Don't Kill Yourself,
Hmm.
DK, what? He went back to the Indiana to the corporate office, and the topic of the conference came up, and a suicide prevention speaker, and he goes, "Hold it right there." I got the guy.
uh,
So yeah, you need to be that guy, that comes up. And I feel blessed that I knew from the age of 9 what I wanted to do. It took a long time to develop the testicular fortitude to do it. And B, because I'd always wanted to make a difference, could
mhm.
never figure out how. And I read a book by Judy Carter called The Message of You, Turning Your Life into a Money-Making Speaking Career. She takes you by the hand to find your heart story, the one you cannot help but tell, the one that gives you, chills. So I went into it thinking I got nothing. Halfway through, I thought, wait a minute. 2 mental illnesses, 4-time suicide loss survivor, 1-time suicide attempt. More nuts in my family, Kelly, than in a squirrel turd. I can speak on suicide prevention. And the reason I did the TED was I thought, well, who's going to take me serious after 2.5 decades of comedy? And my wife said, do a TED Talk. And famously, I said, what's a TED Talk? I got an application that week from a talk up in Canada. Filled out the application, got the audition, booked my first time I tried, and it's called Starting the Conversation on Suicide. And then people took me seriously. Yeah, he could do something serious with humor.
Right. Right. I definitely appreciate all that you do. I want to do one little fun thing I do every now and then. It's
No,
just
no
kind of
fun.
a
No fun.
it's just a rapid fire. I'm going to ask you a question and then you just give me the first thing that comes to mind. What's one sentence people should never say to someone struggling?
Get over it.
What's one sentence that can save a life?
You are not a burden, nor would we be better off without you.
What's the bravest thing someone in pain can do?
Seek help.
What's something you wish someone had said to you earlier?
Buy Microsoft stock. That wasn't the answer you were looking for.
No. We'll give you a take two on that one, but I love the answer.
Yes. Let's see. What could they have said to me? Uh, that is. Uh, I thought you wanted to be a comedian. To trigger that. Well, yeah, I did. Since the ninth grade, I did the talent show in 12th grade. I won. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it just takes somebody to say something, ask a question. Here's my 3 questions. Are you living up to your expectations or someone else's? Are you the person you came here to be? Are you doing what you came here to do? Because a lot of times people don't, again, they get on the treadmill, they run, they're living up to their parents' expectations, their spouse's expectations, society's expectations.
Very
Um,
true. Very true. They don't even realize it.
no, I was flying next to a chief pilot for United. He was on his way to Dallas. United had merged with another airline.
Hmm.
So they have 2 chief pilots. He's going down there to find out if he's the one they're going to keep.
Oh,
So I said to him, man, okay, look, let's say worst case, they pick the other guy. If I could wave a magic wand and you could do anything you want for a living, what would you do? Without missing a beat, he goes, sous chef. Sous chef?
it's, it's
Yeah,
quite a
because
difference.
I did it in college. I loved it. He's he's a chief pilot. I mean, I was floored. In a million years, I would have never expected a sous chef. But again, and when I ask that question and they answer, their energy goes way up. You can tell they're passionate about that.
Yeah,
So,
I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Well, Frank, where can people find out more about you?
I'm in witness protection, so there's no way.
That's why we're not releasing the video on this.
Yeah. Go ahead and redact the. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I got a big footprint on LinkedIn. And mental health comedian, mentalhealthcomedian.com. Or just type in Frank King Comedian, you'll find me. But mentalhealthcomedian.com is the website.
Wonderful, wonderful. One thing we believe deeply at Glow for Hope is that conversation can interrupt crisis, not
Oh, yeah.
perfectly, not dramatically every time, but sometimes simply asking, how are you really doing, changes everything. And you've taken your darkest experiences and turned them into something that helps others find language for theirs. And that's powerful.
Well, and what I say at the in that, and I say it early in the speech, and I close with it. I say, look, here's the deal. This many people die by suicide. Whatever. The good news is you can make a difference. You can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as we're doing right here, and that is having a conversation. If you know how, and I just taught you how, and I've passed out individually wrapped giant size lifesavers. Everybody got one. I don't mention that until the end. I say, you're wondering about the candy, aren't you? Some of you probably know it's wintergreen because you couldn't wait. Yeah. Well, here's the deal. Those are lifesavers, and now you are too.
And it all goes silent, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people. I'm telling you, people come up. You made me laugh, you made me cry. My work is done.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Frank, not just for the laughs, not just for the TED Talks, not just for the remarkable career, but for your honesty, because honesty helps build connection, and connection keeps people alive. So
Yes,
thank you
and
for that.
one of the reasons, or one of the effects is people have an idea what mental illness looks like. They think it's a guy on the corner with a sign that says "will work for food." That's fourth stage mental illness. The society has let them down all the way.
Mm.
But when they see a comedian on stage, obviously high functioning, it's cognitive dissonance. Just like you can't hold those two thoughts in your brain at the same time, because this is what mental illness looks like, as well as the guy on the corner. So it's eye opening, I think, for some people.
Yeah, very much. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up here?
Yes, let me close this out as a comedian would. May I?
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe, and tell your friends. If you did not enjoy this podcast, well, we hope you have no friends.
I love it. And of course, if you or someone you love is in crisis, please contact 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or seek immediate local support. You're not alone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing conversation. Until next time, keep shining. Thank you for joining us on Glow for Hope. If today's conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, your mental wellness matters, and you are never alone. For more resources and support, visit glowforhopenfp.org. That's glowforhopenfp.org. Stay connected, stay hopeful, and keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep shining.
This podcast does not and is not intended to provide medical advice. The information presented on this podcast should not be interpreted or construed in any way as a replacement or substitution for medical advice. It is important that you discuss your condition, treatment options, or any questions that you may have with your doctor or healthcare provider.